Damon here with NLP Gym, and we are here with Doug O'Brien, who will be teaching Sleight of Mouth July 9th and 10th. And really excited about this because I think we started communicating almost 2 years ago when I had this crazy idea of getting you to come here. And you came here for a hypnosis workshop, I think, and we actually got to meet for the first time and we talked a bit. And it's just something that we kept talking about doing, and finally it's happening. So I'm really excited about that. Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited myself.
Cool. All right. Well, let's just jump right in. And for those of the people who maybe don't even have any NLP training who are watching this and are interested in persuasion and influence, and then of course people who do know NLP, I find that persuasion and influence is one of those things that's sort of being left out of NLP trainings more and more. Like it's a little too complicated to teach, so they kind of just push it off and leave do specialty workshops to teach, unfortunately. And so,
Good for me, I guess, though, actually.
What's that?
So that's good for me, though, actually, I suppose, when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, I think so.
If everybody else taught it, then I wouldn't be teaching my specialty workshops in July.
Exactly. So what are people going to learn when they come to this workshop? And what can they learn in 2 days?
It's amazing what you can learn in 2 days. Sleight of mouth. I don't know, since you said that some people might be listening to this who don't know about what NLP is. It's a subset, if you will. It's a portion of NLP that's, I think, particularly interesting because NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, grew out of Richard Bandler and John Grinder modeling experts in other fields. So they modeled the expertise of Milton Erickson and Virginia Satir and other things, other therapists, other forms of therapy. Robert Dilt applied that same modeling that Bandler and Grinder were doing to other people. Robert Dilt applied it to Bandler and found out how Bandler did persuasion, basically. Bandler was just an amazing guy, one of those guys who just have this, as we say in my country, the gift of the blarney, this amazing ability to persuade, to sell a refrigerator to an Eskimo kind of thing. He could do anything. It's just amazing. So Robert Dilts kept thinking, like, how does he do that? And can I figure that out? Can I model his ability and do that myself? In a sense, that's what Sleight of Mouth is all about. It's modeling that ability and then taking it on yourself to be as persuasive as Bandler is naturally.
Okay. And for those who, I've gotten to experience Bandler's training, and he is extremely persuasive. Persuasive is not somebody you would want to have to negotiate something serious with, because he is so persuasive. So why don't you talk a little bit more about that? I know you worked with Bandler for a while. I think he even gave you an endorsement, which I know he doesn't endorse many people. And when I saw that, I was quite impressed. So
I'll just say this, I've met a lot of people in my day, and he's been described as one of the few real geniuses that are walking the planet at the time. And I don't know if that's exactly true, but he's certainly one of the closest people to a genius that I've met. He's quite really unique and remarkable. And he developed this whole field called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, not completely by himself, but largely. It was his own just unique stance and perspective on the world that created it. Just thinking outside the, very, very far outside the 9 dots of most people's way of thinking. NLP is remarkable. It looks at the brain as if it's like a computer, which is vastly different from, the psychotherapy that came before NLP. And it looks at the brain as if it's like a computer and says, people who act in a certain way, whether it's phobic or whatever, they're not crazy, they're not broken, they're responding perfectly. The computer's running a program that creates that result. And it's perfect. All we need to do is sort of change the program and get a different result. So, it's a simple concept, really, but it has had remarkable expansion of possibilities over the years, and particularly in the self-help community, and Tony Robbins and all those people have glommed onto this and, made it huge. And it deserves to be. It is a amazing way of thinking. When it comes to persuasion, you can really unlock the beliefs that people have. You can really find out, what is it at the core of that belief that they're holding on to, and just make a little change. And sometimes that little change is all it really needs to then sort of snowball out and make a vast change along the way. So it's a powerful technology. And I've taught it to, my goodness, almost sorry to admit this, but to lawyers and to salespeople and to politicians. And, you see it all the time. But, I won't claim credit for any of the politicians that are out there. I just, it's like those guys do that, whatever they do on their own. But I have taught it to some of their handlers. So it's an interesting ability.
Yeah. So let's say somebody's coming into this workshop and they don't have any NLP training. What are they going to be able to do after 2 days of this training?
That is actually one of the great things about Sleight of Mouth, is that although it's usually taught, if it is, I guess maybe not so many places teach it anymore, but if it is taught in the master practitioner level, it's at a sort of higher level, not the practitioner, but the master practitioner level of training in NLP. So it's considered kind of an advanced technique. However, you don't really need to know anything particularly about what you learned in the practitioner level to learn Sleight of Mouth. Sleight of Mouth can stand alone. It's about beliefs. It's about the structure of a belief, how a belief is, structured in the brain. And then it offers you 14 different ways of, conversationally and verbally responding to that belief to change the person's way of thinking. So it's like a sales training, it's like, what salesmen do. It's how to, a person comes in with an objection or a thing and they say, well, you should do this instead and buy this product because it's best for you. And they'll go like, wow, yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I mean, it's not quite like that, but it is that effective for salespeople. And, people in 2 days can really master these skills of Sleight of Mouth and then apply it to whatever form of field they're in. I'm a therapist and a coach and a trainer. So for me, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a politician. I don't use it like that. I use it in my field for helping people, in a sense, buy the notion that there's a different way of living, different way of approaching life. So they have to buy into a different way of thinking with the coaching program, et cetera, to expand their business, et cetera. But other people can use the same exact skills that I'm using for therapy, if you will, or coaching. They can apply it to sales. They can apply it to politics. They can apply it to personal relationships. They can apply it to whatever it is that they're looking to be more persuasive in.
That sounds wonderful. I use a lot of reframing and I'm familiar with Sleight of Mouth, but I know that I can really brush up on my skills. And that's when I think people who do have NLP training, and I think a lot of people are attracted to NLP because of this idea of being so persuasive and not just for sales, but in debates and changing people's minds. And that's what I like about this model, is that it's not about being right, because I can argue really well to be right. Or I can win the person over to my side. And you can really do either one, I've found, with Sleight of Mouth. You have that option if you want to make somebody look bad, which I don't recommend, or you can actually change people's minds and change people's opinions. Do you have any examples of that?
One of the things that happens with some of my salespeople in the real estate business is that they have customers that come to them that feel like they shouldn't have to pay a commission. And so, the salespeople, of course, think, yes, you should, because that's how I make my money. So they have a difference of opinion right away. And of course, you can't, afford to really piss off your customer, because that would be bad for sales as well. So, so they've had to learn to be very, politic in how they frame and reframe the notion. But one of the best ways they've done it is through basically a little storytelling. There's one of the Sleight of Mouth patterns is called the metaphor pattern. And if you can think of a good analogy or story about, your point of view that sort of takes away the belief of the other person and supports the belief of yours, it can be really, really powerful. So they tell the little story, I'll tell it very briefly, about how this guy at a pretzel factory that was, making millions of pretzels every hour and, billions of dollars every day, that the factory broke down and nobody could figure out how to fix it. So they were losing all this money. So they brought in this expert, and it took him a short amount of time to diagnose where the problem was, and, minimal effort to fix it. He just sort of had to twist a knob and boom, it all started working again. And I said, great, fantastic, thanks so much. And he said, how much do we owe you? And he said, that'll be $10,000. And they went, what? $10,000? $10,000 for turning a little knob? I'm afraid we're going to need to see an itemized list of, your expenses or whatever. You have to show us an itemized invoice if we're going to get your money like that. And he said, yeah, no problem. So he puts down his briefcase, takes a little pad and writes, for, turning the little knob, $1. For knowing where to turn, $9,999. Which gets the point across. It's not about, the effort, it's about the expertise. You don't go to your brother-in-law, unless he's a dentist. You don't go to your brother-in-law to, pull a tooth. You go to a dentist to pull a tooth. You go to somebody who's expert. And of course, when you get an expert, you pay for it. So it's a telling that story. People go like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. And you don't have to really argue very much beyond that. If the story is a good one, people go, yeah, I see what you mean.
Okay. And so how did you get into this quirky business called NLP? How did you start in this?
You want my background, really?
Yeah.
Well, I was born in a log cabin back in I was a rock musician. If you see my background here, I'm in a New York City apartment in Brooklyn here. I came to New York a long time ago and was playing in a punk rock band around about 1980, 81, called Ultra Violence. You can understand why. It's kind of how I roll. But literally, that's true. And then, we were playing like places like CBGBs, et cetera. And then we got into doing more of a new wave thing in the mid 80s. And we were playing places like, Studio 54 and places like that. But around about 1985, some friends of mine had gone to this Tony Robbins workshop where you walk across hot burning coals and don't burn your feet miraculously through this amazing thing called NLP. And, they said you should go to this. And of course, Tony Robbins's sales model back then was to whoever goes to these seminars, you got to bring your friends and family to the next one. So, they were very persuasive and, forced me to go. So I did eventually go. And to my surprise, I loved it. I thought it was great. Not just Tony Robbins and his energy, but the techniques that he was teaching were from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So I wanted to learn more. So I got on his staff and went finally to a certification course. I was a musician. I don't know if I mentioned that. So I had no money, but kind of worked my way up through the staff, So I got to the seminars. And when I was there, I met Richard Bandler, I met Robert Dilt, I met Dave Dobson. So I met these people who were, co-teaching for Tony. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. They can do Tony's technology even better than he does. And came to realize that's because they invented it. And Tony's actually one of the students of theirs. So I said, oh, wow, maybe I should study with them too. So I went and studied with Bandler, and I went and studied with Robert Dilt. So I got my master practitioner right there in Santa Cruz, California, from Robert Dilt's about, holy Toledo, 30 years ago-ish. Who's counting? Yeah. Oh, wow. Not even done the math. Yeah, about, 28 years ago in Santa Cruz, California. But it was amazing. He had a partner at the time named Todd Epstein, and they were just brilliant, brilliant teachers. And it really got me to the place where not only could I do NLP, but I knew that I knew. I sort of had a congruence about it. And they taught Sleight of Mouth at that training. And I started training other people when I came back from that training in Santa Cruz, because when I came back to New York, people were all saying, like, what is it? How do you do Sleight of Mouth? I've heard about it. What is it? And so I did my first training to all those Tony Robbins people back in New York who wanted to learn Sleight of Mouth. And it was a day, I think, maybe a full day, but it was fun. And people loved it and got so much out of it that I, gradually, refined it and got better at teaching it. And I've been doing it ever since. I've been teaching this seminar for about, 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been doing it that long. And
yeah.
then you wrote a book.
Sorry?
You wrote a book.
I did. Yes, I wrote a book.
And you did some CDs. Or you did
yes, I did.
Sorry.
Hold the phone. I'm just going to step over here for a second into my closet. I happen to have them right here.
Okay.
Apparently, I don't have the workbook that comes with the CDs, but the CDs look like that. Mm-hmm. There's two of them in there. And it comes with a workbook that we'll use in the seminar we're using in Santa Cruz. And then this is the book I wrote called The User's Guide,
Right.
The Sleight of Mouth. I wrote this because of the way Robert Dilt taught me how to do sleight of mouth in Santa Cruz those years ago. It was just so effective that this was, kind of basically how I teach the seminar. And frankly, I just didn't think anybody else taught it quite the same way that I'd learned it, that I found so effective to have those, those icon representational charts or mind maps, if you will, to help learn things not just auditorily, but also visually and sort of spatially anchor them and get them into your body. So by the time the seminar's over, they're in you.
Right.
You just got them.
That is what really excites me about this workshop, because I'll tell you how I learned sleight of mouth. I learned it about 2 years ago. I learned it from Robert Dilts. However, master practitioner now versus master practitioner 28 years ago, there's so much more technology. And the truth is Robert has created so much of that technology that when you go to his trainings, you're just overloaded, and he's getting through as much of it as possible. So we didn't spend a lot of time on sleight of mouths. And I bought his book, which I tell people, Robert doesn't write books, he writes encyclopedias. And you don't really get to the patterns until the end. And your book and the CDs are a wonderful complement to that, because it's sort of like, well, okay, here's the encyclopedia, but here's a way that you can jump right into it and start using it right away. And that's what I found. That's why I turned to your book, and I bought the audio too, because I was looking for something a little more user-friendly that I could jump into. And again, these things, you really have to get into the muscle. You have to really drill it in. And that's basically why I turned to you and asked you to come and teach this, because I know that you spend some time in the workshop really doing that, showing us how to drill it in so that you can think about it.
Tell you the truth, I'm really thrilled to hear you say that, because that is exactly why I wrote the book and exactly why I teach the way that I teach. Because I love Robert. I can say nothing bad against the guy. I absolutely love him, love the way that he teaches. I love the encyclopedias he writes. But part of the reason, and just between you and me and the few people that listen to this, part of the reason I wrote this book is because I bought his book waiting for years for it to come out. When it finally came out, I thought, really? You didn't even put any of those charts in there. The charts that I learned from you, you didn't even put in your book. So I felt like I was compelled to write this. I had to write it. Because, everything that's on those 2 CDs, that's it. That's the material. I don't teach anything beyond that in the 2 days of seminar. But we drill it. We get it. We play games with it. We have teams, and we do tag team things. We get it so it's in your body. I'm a musician. I taught piano lessons for years. It's not about how good I can be and let me show you how this works. I want my students to be able to play the Beethoven sonata by the time we're done. Not just me show them how to do it and appreciate it or whatever, but I want them to do it. I want my students to walk away feeling like I've mastered this. So that's the whole point of this thing. So it's all about playing with the patterns and learning them so that they're ingrained in you and just sort of automatically happen when you hear a belief coming at you from somebody else.
Yeah, it's not very persuasive if somebody throws an objection your way and then you go, oh, okay, what's that pattern? Which I found myself doing right when I initially learned it. And when I got your stuff and I started practicing the way that you were saying to practice, it just kind of rolled off much easier. And then what you say in the book about, it's not just throwing one pattern out there every once in a while, it's combining these patterns. And when you keep reframing the same objection with multiple patterns, it's like the person almost has no choice but in order to understand what you're saying, they have to think about things in a different way.
That's great. Yeah, very good. No, I agree.
Great. Well, is there anything else that you want to say about the workshop that we haven't covered that people should know, or anything else?
Most fun you can have without sex or drugs, or most fun you can have with your clothes on. How's that?
And
I'm not sure that's true, but it's a good motto.
It's a good motto. Yeah, we'll explore that more.
It is truly a fun seminar. I mean, I guess one of the things I took away from Tony Robbins' trainings is that, if you make them grueling and boring, people, will not really enjoy them that much and will not take that much away. So, we play games. This is a fun shop. It's not so much a workshop, it's a fun shop, but it's really practical. And by the time you're done, they do kind of roll off your tongue. It's kind of amazing. We always do it so that the people attending are writing out their own beliefs. So I'm not feeding you scripts.
Right.
I'm not telling you what to say. It's like I'm teaching jazz really more than I'm teaching classical music. Mm-hmm. So I used the Beethoven sonata example before. It's more like you're teaching jazz standards or whatever. So people are learning to improvise within the patterns their own way. Because like, for instance, I don't do politics. I don't do sales per se. I don't sell objects or whatever. But people who are in those things will be spending the seminar writing beliefs that they're hearing in their model of the world or their, real world for them. And they're bringing practicing things for that situation so that by the time they're done with the weekend, they're going to hit the ground on Monday morning at their sales job, just on fire.
Mm. And I have to say, so I am in sales and I have used it for sales very effectively. I think what I enjoyed most, though, was coming up with my own limiting beliefs about whatever, whether it was goals or my own success, and running it through these patterns. And you will start to get ideas that you would have never thought of because you're pushing yourself to think in different frames. And so it's like allowing new information to come in that you weren't getting in before, because your generalization was too limited or your belief was too limited. So I found that to be extremely powerful.
Yeah, good for you, Grasshopper. That is advanced work right there.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And one more thing I wanted to say was when you and I were emailing and sort of solidifying, putting this workshop into place, you kind of had a moment there in one of your emails that you were coming to the realization that Santa Cruz is not exactly where your NLP career started, but it was a turning point for you because you learned Sleight of Mouth, and that's one of the things that you're well known for teaching, and you wrote the book and you did the program on it. And it was like almost like the email you sent me was I could almost hear you thinking or hear you talking like, oh wow, okay, yeah, I'm coming back, I'm coming full circle back to Santa Cruz, and this will be the first time you've taught in Santa Cruz, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I'm really excited about it, actually. Santa Cruz is also the first place I ever rode a roller coaster, so looking to do that again sometime too.
And it's still here.
I'm glad.
We can do a bunch of shots of we'll do a bunch of shots of Jameson, and then we'll get on the roller coaster.
Okay, that's the deal. That's the deal. Well,
Okay.
Thanks so much for having me here. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still looking forward to this, and I've been telling all of my friends, including I have a lot of friends who are sales professionals who are always asking me, what's this NLP thing that you do? And I'm going to them now and saying, this is the perfect workshop for you to really see not only what NLP is about, but how it can really help you in what you do. And I've also found this, as we're talking, I keep thinking of all the ways that I've used this. And another one is if you have employees. Anybody who has employees knows how difficult it can be to motivate them, to get them to do what you need them to do. And they start to get caught in their patterns and they start creating limiting beliefs. You run some sleight of mouth patterns over them, and it's so gentle the way it can come across and really shift their thinking. And that's where you start to become a leader. So in a lot of ways, you can actually look at what you're going to teach us as leadership training, because leaders they influence people, and that's why they become leaders.
I think one of the reasons that's really true is that Sleight of Mouth starts from listening. So much of sales, the way people teach sales is that, we're going to teach you what to say. And really, Sleight of Mouth is about listening first. You have to really listen, really understand what the person is saying, where they're coming from, in order to, unpack their beliefs so that you can artfully step in there and guide them to thinking differently. So it's about listening, which is like radical, listening to that other person and really understanding where they're coming from. It's about communication, which starts with the word commune. When you commune with people, you have a community, you're matching with them, you're meeting with them. I also start usually when I teach Sleight of Mouth with teaching the agreement frame, which isn't technically part of Sleight of Mouth, but it's a great way to start. which is, again, where you're listening to the person and finding where you do agree with what they're saying, so that you can pace and then lead, which is, of course, a central tenet of NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis. But, you pace first and then you lead. So you listen first and then you persuade. Same thing.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, I keep making it sound like we're going to close this out and then stuff to talk about. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about when you get here, and yeah, be prepared. We're going to have some good conversations before and after, and hopefully during.
Hope so.
Okay. Well, this is Damon from NLP Gym talking to Doug O'Brien, who will be here July 9th and 10th, which is a Saturday and Sunday, here in Santa Cruz to teach Sleight of Mouth, one of the, I'd say the funnest models that I've ever come across. And mainly, like you mentioned before, it is modeled after Richard Bandler. And if you've ever seen him in action, you know what a character he is, and charismatic and certainly persuasive and influential. So this is going to be good stuff. I'm really excited.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well,
see you soon.